then you can't possibly know how I feel.
Baby, 12 o'clock.
A nanny named Gilbertine picks out a book titled Baby's Day Out to read to a baby named Bink. Before she begins, Gilbertine asks if Bink doesn't want another book because they've read Baby's Day Out several times already. Bink doesn't seem interested in changing the book, and he gestures to Gilbertine to read Baby's Day Out while referring to it as Boo Boo. Following this, Gilbertine starts reading about a baby who went on an adventure with his nanny to check out many places in the city. Elsewhere, Bink's parents, Lorraine and Bennington Cotwell, sit together to have breakfast. Lorraine then mentions that Bink is going to have his picture taken this morning. Bennington tells Lorraine to say hello to their photographer, Old Willie, for him, but his wife mentions that she's getting someone else to take the photos. She adds that she has hired downtown baby photographers to come to the house to take Bink's photo. Bennington looks surprised by this, and he mentions that Old Willie has been taking pictures of the babies in his family for many years. However, Lorraine complains that Old Willie hasn't had a picture in the newspaper in over 20 years. She adds that everyone they know has had their baby's picture in the paper, but Bink still hasn't appeared in one despite being almost a year old. She also talks about how people have been asking why they're keeping their baby secret. Bennington then says he's sure all that talk will disappear when Bink appears in the newspaper, and Lorraine seems pleased that he agrees with her.
Get the gear.
Elsewhere, the workers at Downtown Baby Photographers get their van hijacked by three criminals, Eddie, Norby, and Vico. After taking the official clothes of the workers, the three criminals change into them and decide to pose as the photographers who will take Bink's photo. Almost immediately, Eddie finds the address to the Cotwell mansion, and he looks pleased because his real plan is to kidnap Bink.
You really think we can get away with this? No.
Back at the house, Bennington gets ready for work and prepares to leave. However, Lorraine makes him realize that he has forgotten to say goodbye to his son. Bennington then plays with Bink and says goodbye to him while telling Lorraine that he wonders if babies can understand the wonderful things they hear every day. After Bennington leaves, Lorraine struggles to select the right clothes for Bink to wear because she doesn't want him to look like a regular kid. Gilbertine eventually makes a suggestion to help Lorraine make a choice, and after she does this, the nanny dresses up for Bink. Shortly after, the criminals arrive at the house in their disguised outfits, and Eddie goes to ring the doorbell while Norby and Vico bring out the photography equipment from the van. As the butler, Mr. Andrews, opens the door, Eddie fakes a foreign accent and says that he's there with his team to take Bink's photo. Andrews seems suspicious of Eddie's fake accent, but he still allows the photographers to enter the house. While they're waiting for Lorraine to bring Bink to the living room for the shoot, Vico sees an expensive snow globe and asks Eddie if he should steal it. However, Eddie sounds pissed and tells Vico that he's at the house for a hit of a lifetime and not a petty robbery.
Thank you.
Suddenly, Gilbertine brings Bink into the room with Lorraine. Eddie then admires Bink and says that he's sure Lorraine must be proud to be his mom. Lorraine looks happy about the compliment, and Eddie properly introduces himself as Mr. Charlie of Downtown Baby Photographers. As he says that they need to start immediately, he carries Bink out of his stroller, but the baby suddenly kicks him in the groin. Even though this hurts Eddie, he pretends to be fine with it, and he drops the baby on a chair, after which he tells Vico to head outside to bring something from the van. Interestingly, this happens to be a code to move the van close to the window, and as Vico heads out to do this, he looks happy and says that he's going to be rich.
Regular babies.
Meanwhile, Lorraine tells Eddie that she wants individual photos of Bink and a portrait of her with her baby. Eddie says he'll do whatever she wants, and Lorraine mentions that he comes highly recommended because he has photographed the children of some of her friends. She also mentions that the photos have always appeared in newspapers and magazines, and that she wants the same thing for Bink because his picture hasn't been published before. Eddie pretends to be concerned about this, and he mentions that Bink will soon become well known. alone. Lorraine then says that she wants Eddie to set a new standard for beauty in baby photography. Eddie says he'll do just that, but he asks if she and her workers can give him some time alone with Bink. Lorraine and Gilbertine look confused by this, but Eddie says he just needs Bink's complete attention. He adds that he doesn't want Lorraine to distract Bink because he wants to take a perfect picture. Lorraine still seems confused by this, but Eddie asks if Bink does well with people that he's not intimate with. Lorraine doesn't seem to know the answer to this, and she asks Gilbertine, who says that Bink is a friendly boy.
No. Almost done.
As she's about to say something else, Eddie interrupts her and says it's good to know that Bink is friendly. He then complains about Lorraine's dress being too colorful, and Lorraine says she'll get it changed so that she won't ruin her son's picture. As Lorraine heads to her room to change her dress, Gilbertine gives Eddie a copy of Baby's Day Out and tells him to read it to Bink if he gets cranky. Eddie thanks her for this and says that it will be invaluable. Gilbertine seems suspicious that there's something off about Eddie, but she just heads out with Andrews, who locks the door so that the photographers can have some time alone with Bink, just like they requested. Almost immediately, Eddie carries Bink and hands him over to Vico through the window so that he can put the baby inside the van.
I'm Mrs. Cotwell.
Eddie and Norby also head out and leave the house in the van. Shortly after, they ditch the van in the middle of nowhere and transfer their things into a different one before leaving the scene. Elsewhere, Lorraine, Gilbertine, and Andrews return to the living room only to see that the photographers have kidnapped Bink. As Lorraine looks confused, she sees a decorated note confirming that the photographers kidnapped the baby. The note also includes a warning, telling Lorraine not to call the police. Shortly after, Bennington is sent a copy of the ransom note, which states that $5 million must be dropped inside a trash can in a specific location with no police involved. Bennington looks shocked by this, and he starts wondering what to do about the situation. Elsewhere, the kidnappers take Bink to their apartment, and Eddie tells Norby to change Bink's diaper and clothes so that he'll look like a normal baby. After Norby does this, Eddie tells him to take the baby to the bedroom so that he won't attract attention from the neighbors. He also mentions that Norby has to sing a lullaby to put the baby to sleep. Norby doesn't seem to know any lullabies, but he eventually sings an incorrect version of Mary Has a Little Lamb. Eddie and Vico look surprised by this, but they just ignore Norby's singing.
You have a beautiful little boy.
Interestingly, Bink doesn't fall asleep, and as Norby complains about this, Eddie tells him to read the baby's book. After Vico throws the book to Norby, he struggles to read the book well, and Vico seems to enjoy hearing his friend mispronounce some words. Meanwhile, an FBI agent named Dale arrives at the Cotwell mansion just as Lorraine prepares to leave to look for her son. Dale says it's pointless and dangerous for her to go out to look for Bink in a big city. Lorraine says she can't just do nothing, but Dale insists that it's best if she stays at home while his officers try to find Bink. Elsewhere, Norby eventually falls asleep while reading the book, and Bink starts opening the pages to look at the pictures. Almost immediately, he sees a pigeon by the window and realizes that it's the same bird in his book. As he looks excited, he goes out through the window to follow the bird while Norby continues sleeping.
Then you can't possibly know how I feel.
Meanwhile, Vico starts biting his fingernails and spitting them out repeatedly. Eddie seems disgusted by this, but Vico doesn't think he's doing anything wrong. After Bink follows the bird for a while, he eventually looks through an open part of the roof and sees Vico and Eddie inside the living room. His drool eventually lands on Eddie's neck, and Eddie looks pissed because he thinks Vico is responsible. As he hits Vico's head for spitting on his neck, Bink looks pleased and laughs. After looking at the roof, Eddie and Vico realize that Bink is up there, and they look terrified. They then head to the bedroom and see that Norby is sleeping. Eddie angrily grabs Norby to wake up, but he tells his friends to keep quiet so they won't disturb the baby. Eddie seems pissed by this, and he shouts at Norby while saying that the baby is on the roof.
Chicken!
Following this, the three men head out through the window, and Eddie sees Bink crawling on a narrow plank to reach the next building. As Eddie tries to stop Bink, he accidentally gets hit with the plank before his friends come to help him. Eddie happens to be half-conscious because of this, but his friends still grab him and mention that they have to jump to the roof of the other building. As Norby and Vico jump, they forget that they're holding Eddie, and he falls off the building and lands badly on a garbage bin. An antenna near the building also falls on him, and his friends look worried about him. Meanwhile, Bink enters someone's apartment through the window and tries to leave, but he's unable to reach the door. Luckily, a delivery guy knocks on the door, and the owner of the apartment just opens it without realizing that Bink is on the floor. Bink then crawls out and unknowingly removes the package that the delivery guy used to keep the elevator door open. Vico and Norby eventually go to the garbage bin to help Eddie, and Bink just crawls past them while they're distracted.
Oh, great. It's gonna be at least 1,000 feet.
Suddenly, Bink sees a blue bus that is identical to the one in his book, and he looks excited by this. After he enters the bus, Eddie sees him inside and alerts Vico and Norby that Bink is getting away. Almost immediately, they get into their van and chase the bus. Just before the bus gets to the next bus stop, Bink enters someone's bag while looking at the things inside. When the bus eventually stops, the woman gets off with her bag. Norby still goes to check the bus to see if Bink is there, but the driver says he hasn't seen a baby. Norby looks disappointed by this, and as he goes to tell the others what happened, the woman carrying Bink in her bag insults Eddie and Vico for parking their van wrongly on the sidewalk. Vico seems pissed and insults her back, but as she walks away, he sees Bink inside her bag and looks shocked. As Norby and Eddie then wonder where Bink could be, Vico tells them that he just saw the baby inside the woman's bag.
What?
Package?
Meanwhile, the bus driver calls someone to ask if they've heard anything about a missing baby on a bus, because a strange man just asked him about it. Elsewhere, Eddie, Norby, and Vico start following the woman to plot how they'll snatch the baby from her bag. The woman doesn't seem to understand what they want, and she attacks them before they can do anything. While she's distracted, Bink crawls out of her bag and looks excited to see a revolving door. After he goes toward the door to see how it works, he gets pushed into a department store, and he looks amazed to see how big the place is. Suddenly, someone from the store's daycare center sees him and assumes that he escaped from under her watch. She then takes him back to the care center to change his diaper. Shortly after, he escapes from there while hiding under another baby's stroller. As he then heads out of the store, he crawls toward a reporter who is talking about his disappearance on the news. The news report happens to be live, and a man at a veterans retirement home watches it on the TV.
There you go, my little escape artist.
Interestingly, Lorraine is also watching the news live, and she looks disappointed that she hasn't found her son. Almost immediately, Bink accidentally pulls down the reporter's microphone by the cable, and as the reporter bends to pick it up, the cameraman gets a brief shot of the baby. Unfortunately, Lorraine has already taken her eyes off the TV, but Eddie and his friends see Bink and immediately try to find him. Before they can get to him, though, he sees a taxi just like the one in his book, and he crawls inside without the driver and passenger knowing about it. Eddie and his friends then see this, and Norby laments that they're always very close to catching Bink. Elsewhere, Bennington arrives home and gets a call from someone named Jojo, who says he has some information on Bink's whereabouts. Shortly after, Dale follows Bennington and Lorraine to meet Jojo, who claims that he has seen the baby, but he can't remember where. As Bennington then gives him some money, Jojo says that Bink might be in the house across the street. Despite saying that he's not sure, Bennington and Lorraine quickly head there with Dale and the cops.
Where's the baby?
They then meet a woman named Mrs. McCrae and mention that they're looking for a missing kid. McCrae says the babies in her house are hers, but the FBI agents still insist on checking around. Interestingly, Lorraine sees a boy who looks like Bink, but as she realizes that he's not her son, she mentions that McCrae has a beautiful boy. Before she walks away, McCrae says she prays Lorraine's son comes back to her because she can't imagine what it's like for a child to go missing. Lorraine then says she hopes McCrae never gets to know what it's like. As she heads out, Dale apologizes to McCrae for disturbing her. Bennington also says sorry for barging into her house, and McCrae tells him that she believes there's someone somewhere who watches over babies. Bennington says he hopes so, and he heads out immediately.
Thank you, ma'am.
Elsewhere, the taxi eventually stops, and Bink sees the entrance of the zoo just as he gets down. Since it's a place he has seen in his book before, he looks excited and crawls past moving traffic to try to get to the zoo. Almost immediately, Eddie and his friends find the taxi, but they realize that Bink is now on the road and crawling toward the zoo. As they look scared because they're worried that he might get hit, they quickly try to cross the road, but no one stops for them. Bink eventually makes it into the zoo while Eddie and his friends continue trying to cross the road. Unfortunately, their feet get stepped on by a moving car, and after they cross the road, they accidentally jump into an open pit. After they get out of the pit, they complain about how the kid keeps getting away. Almost immediately, Eddie spots baby tracks on the ground and figures out that Bink is inside a section for apes. Just as they look around for him, they see him inside a cage with a gorilla, and this leaves Eddie terrified.
Who put himself to sleep reading the kids' nursery story?
Norby also looks disappointed by this, but Vico mentions that it seems the gorilla likes Bink because he's giving the baby an apple. Following this, Vico tries to pull Bink away, but the gorilla pounds his hands and leaves him in pain. Eddie then tells Norby to try to use a mop to pull Bink closer. Unfortunately, the gorilla doesn't like this, and he uses the mop to throw Norby into the air. Shortly after, the gorilla and the baby fall asleep, and Eddie decides to use this opportunity to pull Bink closer. The gorilla wakes up just before he can do this, and he gets flung toward another cage. Just then, Bink leaves the gorilla cage through a back gate, while Vico and Norby try to help Eddie. Back at the Cotwell mansion, Lorraine looks sad as she sarcastically tells Bennington that she has gotten her wish because her son is now on the front page of newspapers in the country. Meanwhile, Bink crawls to a park, and someone notices that he's alone. As she asks where his mom is, he looks at a woman sitting in the park. The lady immediately thinks that's his mom, and she just walks away. After a while, Eddie and the others start looking for Bink, and Vico spots him crawling around some bushes. As they almost catch him, he crawls down a tunnel, and Eddie looks disappointed by this. However, he and his friends find the end of the tunnel and eventually catch Bink. Before they can leave, though, they see two cops checking out their van because the engine is still running. Eddie and his friends quickly sit on a nearby bench and pretend to be admiring the beauty of the surroundings. Eddie also hides Bink between his legs and covers him with his jacket. As the cops approach the men to ask about the van, Eddie confirms that it's theirs, but he suddenly gets uncomfortable as Bink nearly injures his groin. The cops still ask more questions about the van, and Bink finds a lighter in Eddie's pocket. He somehow manages to turn it on while playing with it, and he drops it just under Eddie's groin. Eddie looks terrified but can't do anything because he doesn't want the cops to know that he's hiding a baby between his legs.
Excuse me.
As he seems quite uncomfortable and nearly cries, the cops look confused, but Norby says that Eddie is just emotional. Eddie eventually signals to Norby and Vico to escort the cops away, and as they do this, Bink escapes again. After the cops leave the scene, Eddie quickly takes off the jacket from his legs, and his friends realize that Bink has set Eddie's groin on fire. Vico then manages to put out the fire by stepping on it, but Eddie doesn't seem happy about this. He also sends Vico to start looking for Bink because they can't let the baby get away again. Elsewhere, Lorraine enters Bink's room and sees Gilbertine looking sad. Lorraine then mentions that she hasn't forgotten about Gilbertine's feelings. Gilbertine says it doesn't matter, but Lorraine mentions that it does because she's the one who is closer to Bink. Lorraine then seems disappointed that she barely spends time with her son, and she says that she can't help but worry about him or where he could be. Interestingly, Bink now happens to be at a construction site, and as he sees someone eating a donut, he looks excited. The man eventually drops his donut on a heavy metal bar, but Bink still manages to reach it. After he sits on the metal bar, it turns out that the heavy object is actually attached to a crane that is pulling it up.
We usually used logs.
Vico sees this just as he gets to the construction site, and he looks terrified. Shortly after, Eddie and Norby arrive at the scene, and as they ask where Bink is, Vico tells them what he just saw. They then walk past the sleeping security guard and take an elevator to reach a high point where they'll be able to grab Bink. Following this, Eddie tells Vico to jump on the heavy metal and grab Bink. Vico asks why it has to be him, and Eddie says it's because Norby is scared of heights. Vico still doesn't want to do this, but Eddie insists that he has to jump and grab the baby. Just as he does this, he tilts the balance of the bar, and Bink just slides past him and lands smoothly on a moving elevator. Norby looks shocked and wonders how Bink keeps getting away easily, and Eddie says it's just baby luck. Almost immediately, Vico calls Eddie to help him because he can't hold on to the bar for long. Eddie then turns to Norby and tells him to jump to save Vico. Norby looks scared and says that Vico didn't call his name, but Eddie still insists that he has to do it. As Norby then jumps to grab Vico, he loses balance and ends up dangling just like his friend. Unfortunately, he's unable to hold on to Vico for long, and he falls badly on a piece of wood before landing inside a vat of wet cement. Meanwhile, Vico jumps back into the building and bumps into Eddie.
Baby, 12 o'clock.
As they stand up together, they see Bink crawling in a section below them, and Eddie shouts at Vico to jump on a moving elevator so he can quickly reach the baby. Unfortunately, Vico lands badly on it, and as he briefly loses consciousness, he gets hit repeatedly by the elevator. He eventually gets knocked onto an object with wheels, and as it moves toward the edge, Vico gets thrown off the building. He then lands inside a garbage bin, and as he looks happy to be alive, someone unknowingly pours some glue on his body. After this, Eddie realizes that he's the only one left to catch Bink, and he immediately goes after the baby. Just as he gets face to face with Bink, Eddie looks pleased and says that the baby can't get away again. Bink just ignores him and crawls toward the edge of the building after his drool lands on the floor. As Eddie tries to grab Bink, he steps on the drool and slips. He then gets hit with a hammer in the face, and as he tries to stand up again, he accidentally pulls a lever that causes a vat of glue to get dumped on him. Eddie looks disgusted by this, and even though the floor is now very slippery, he still walks slowly toward Bink. Almost immediately, a platform carrying some equipment toward the ground gets to the edge of the building, and Bink easily climbs onto it. Eddie looks disappointed by this, and as he wonders what to do, he sees a crane's dangling hook and decides to jump on it so he can follow it to the ground.
The Milwaukee mob couldn't kill me.
Just as he does this, the site workers close for the day, and they all leave the premises. Bink also escapes before the gate is locked, and one of the construction workers sees him. As he looks confused, he tells one of his colleagues about the baby he just saw around the corner. Interestingly, Bink has already crawled away from the scene, and the man's colleague thinks he's just seeing things. After the security guard locks the gate, Eddie realizes that he's now stuck in the air. Luckily, Norby and Vico still happen to be around, and they tell Eddie that they have a plan to bring him down. Elsewhere, Dale returns to the Cotwell mansion and tells Bink's parents that since the media broke the story about Bink's disappearance, his agents have been getting different calls. He adds that there was a report about a man looking for a baby on a bus in the morning, and that someone else mentioned that a baby was missing from a department store care center. As he talks about reports of a baby seen at the zoo, a downtown park, and a building under construction, Gilbertine looks shocked and says that Bink is doing everything in his book. Dale and the others look confused, but Gilbertine suddenly mentions that she knows where Bink is headed next, as she says that Bink will be at the old soldier's home because that's the next place in the book. Bennington and Lorraine quickly leave the house with the cops to find him. Interestingly, Bink really crawls to the veteran's retirement home and remembers it as one of the places in his book. He then crawls inside, and one of the veterans recognizes him as the baby who appeared on the TV earlier. The other veterans don't seem to know anything about this, but they still look happy to see Bink. Just as they sing to entertain him, the cops arrive at the retirement home with Bennington and Lorraine, who look happy to be reunited with their son. As Lorraine then holds her baby, she She looks at Gilbertine and realizes that the nanny really knows Bink very well. Shortly after, as they head back home, Bink suddenly spots the clock on the roof of the building where Eddie and his friends live. He then starts saying boo-boo, and as his parents look confused, Gilbertine says it's what he calls his book. As Lorraine also notices that Bink is looking at the clock, she wonders if there's one in the book. Almost immediately, Gilbertine realizes that Bink is trying to tell them where his book is. Following this, Dale gets all the cops to head toward the building to find Bink's book. Just as Eddie and the others complain about Bink's escape and how they'll have to start doing petty crimes again, they suddenly hear Bink calling for his boo-boo. Eddie initially thinks he's just hearing things, but as he and the others look out the window, they realize that Bink has led the cops to their apartment. They look disappointed by this, and Dale tells them to throw down the book and put their hands over their heads. After Eddie throws the book, the criminals do just as they're told before they get arrested. Later that night at the Cotwell mansion, Bennington and Lorraine put Bink to bed and say goodnight to him. After they leave the room, Bennington tells Lorraine to say hello to old Willie for him since she's now taking Bink to meet their old photographer tomorrow. Meanwhile, Bink gets out of bed and picks out another book from the shelf behind him. As Bink sees that the book is about a baby's trip to China, he looks excited and eager to find out what happens in the story. After 3 criminals kidnap a baby, they eventually lose him and start going around the city to find him. Despite getting so close to Bink many times, they experience a series of silly accidents and struggle to catch him. Interestingly, it turns out that Bink is going to the places in his favorite book, and with his nanny's help, his parents and the cops are able to find him. As Bink then leads the cops to find his book, the kidnappers get caught, and he returns home safely with his parents, who realize that they need to start spending more time with their son.